Chair will state that Senator D'Alessandro is excused for the day, and I will look for a motion to go into executive session. Moved by Senator Gaida, seconded by Senator Reagan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. First bill we'll take up is House Bill 103.
Move what to pass.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass on House Bill 103. Now seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Any discussion?
Just it's comment on our long history with this bill.
This is the one establishing a dental benefit under the state Medicaid program. We have already passed Senate Bill 422, which does the same thing, so I think we're just justifying our vote from before. Any further comments? Senator Gaida.
Very briefly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think it's common knowledge that the cost of not passing this will far surpass the cost of passing it in terms of preventing consequential emergency room visits and later on much more serious dental work that's necessary. So I'm in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion of ought to pass, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Somebody should take this on.
Senator Rosenwald? Next, House Bill 481. Senator Rosenwald moves ought to pass on House Bill 481. That's seconded by Senator Hennessy. This is establishing the Office of Right to Know Ombudsman and making an appropriation thereof. Any discussion? Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to speak again, but this is a bill that came out of a 5 years ago commission that I chaired on fixing the appeals process for right to know complaints, and it has finally come home to fruition, and I appreciate the committee's support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Gaida. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of the ought to pass motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and motion carries. And Senator Gaida? Going on to House Bill 1066. Senator Hennessy moves ought to pass on House Bill 1066. That is seconded by Senator Rosenwald. This is requiring the Commissioner of Department of Environmental Services to prepare a plan relative to cyanobacteria blooms in New Hampshire. Discussion. Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I had to look up this bacteria, but I'm glad that I did because I see that it's thought to increase cases of ALS, and that's also been seen in Gulf War veterans from not in the water, but somewhere else in Qatar. And so I think this is an important bill.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the ought to pass motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries. Senator Hennessy. Next bill will be House Bill 1221. Senator Hennessy moves ought to pass. Is there a second? Second by Senator Gaida. and it's open for amendment. And I'd like to bring forward Amendment 1794S. And it's seconded by Senator Hennessy. To go through this briefly, there were a couple things that, as we were looking over the original bill, that questions came up. One of them was, what was the definition of a municipality? Was it a town? Was it a school district? Was it both? So you'll see that in this one here, we have used the term political subdivision. And then on the amendment down on line 16, it ties that all together. We're talking about the normal and accrued liability contributions for each political subdivision for benefits under the retirement system on account of its Group 2 members and Group 1 teacher members. So I think that brought it all together. And then also the next line down, line 18, you'll see that we are basing the distribution on the actual payroll data from fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. That is so that we leave enough time to figure out the distributions appropriately so that they could be applied to a December tax bill. Senator Gaida.
I would just note on line 20,
Mike.
On line 20, Mr. Chair, I note that the term municipalities is used, and we may want to just strike that as a committee-friendly amendment. Take out the words "to municipalities."
We get an agreement on the committee that we'll change that to political subdivisions?
Or just leave it out.
Grants, okay. That good? Okay. All those in favor of that as a committee amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, so we're on to the bill as, no, we need to vote on the amendment. You've had a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the amendment? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries. We're now on to ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1221.
Move on to pass as amended.
Senator Gaida moves ought to pass as amended. That's seconded by Senator Hennessy. Any discussion? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. It won't surprise you that I won't be voting for this, but I'm looking at information we asked DRA for on the impact, the revenue impact of the changes to the business taxes we've already made this term. And I note that over this year and the next 2 years, we've made changes that reduce tax revenues based, calculated on a static basis by $300 million already. So I don't believe that another $8.5 million a year tax cut is warranted or even a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gaida.
I think DRA also testified, Mr. Chairman, that the summation of all of the business tax cuts was $300 million, not of what we did in the last year. Thank you.
Further discussion? There being none, the motion before us is ought to pass as amended. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
And motion carries 5-1. And Senator Gaida?
Please.
Okay, going on to House Bill 1288. Oops, sorry, skipped over it. House Bill 1263. Just seeing if you're awake. Okay, and this is relative to prescribed studies on health, physical education, wellness, and personal finance literacy in schools. And do we have a question on that? Someone here from the Department of Ed? Oh, okay. Well, I think some of the questions were, you know, why is this being directed by the legislature, not the Board of Education? Okay. Is there a motion on 1263?
Move on to pass.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass, seconded by Senator Hennessy. Discussion. Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I agree that there's important information in this bill, I'll be voting against this. In the remarks of Representative Ladd, who chairs House Education, quote, "This bill is reinforcing what we already have in rules." I'm not sure that the state legislature needs to do that. I also don't know whether the local school boards shouldn't be doing that themselves if it's already in rules. So there's clearly an enforcement or a follow-through problem that shouldn't require legislation. That's require activity by the Department of Ed. And so for that reason, I'll be opposing this. The other concern that I have is I don't see any definition of what grade levels any of this information may be taught at. And I find that some of the things that are being given over to schools and mandated by law in this bill actually, in my opinion, belong in the purview of mom and dad in the home and the family setting. So for those reasons, I'll be opposing this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion. Senator Rosenwald? I was just, you had your mic on, so I didn't know if you wanted. Oh, okay. Further discussion. I too will be voting against this. Senator Gaida has indicated one of the reasons is that it's already in rules, so I'm not sure that it's needed. But then secondly, I get some concerned at the legislature again, directing that the school board shall do this and that the school board shall teach this, and I'm wondering why that's not the coming through the Department of Education or through the Board of Education itself. Any further discussion? Motion before us is ought to pass on House Bill 1263. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. And the motion carries 4-2. And Senator Reagan? Now we'll go on to House Bill 1288.
Move on to pass.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass. That's seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Discussion. This is relative to the terms of certain officers' names, duties, and funds of certain divisions within the Department of Administrative Services. And Senator Gaida, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, note that Commissioner Arlinghouse has stated this will be a zero net cost bill. And for that reason, I'll be supporting it because of the needed changes in the administrative positions.
Further discussion? Seeing none, motion before us is ought to pass on House Bill 1288. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries. No, I'll take that out. House Bill 1513.
Move on to pass.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass. That's seconded by Senator Rosenwald. And I believe, so, open for amendments. Senator Rosenwald, you recognize.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce Amendment 1802S and speak about it, please.
You're recognized.
Thank you. This is the same language that House Finance passed last night. And what it does is it stops the downshifting to property taxpayers that was spoken of on the Senate floor last week, and says that DOE is responsible for paying the cost for these special ed students from the ages of 21 until their 22nd birthday. So it makes it clear that it's not for the entire school year in which they turn 22. It's through the age they're 21, and that was apparently something that the Attorney General thought we needed to fix in our law because of the First Circuit decision. But again, this is the same language that the House passed last night, and so I bring it here today so that if we make the two bills look consistent, and I think the other one is Senate Bill 394, it will give us options.
Thank you. So Senator Rosenwald is moving Amendment 1802S. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Reagan. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing Senator Hennessy.
Thank you. Can I ask something of the department, please?
Absolutely.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Caitlin Davis. I work for the Department of Education.
Thank you.
Senator Hennessy, you're recognized.
Thanks, Director. Could you tell, so we have an amended fiscal note as of 4/25, and it includes the estimated cost for residential placements, students who are in a separate school, so not in their home public school, but it still does not include what we discussed in Senate Education of the cost for kids who are in their home district. I want to understand why that wasn't included in here and try and get an understanding of what the total impact for this bill will be on the state.
So Rebecca Fredette is on her way. She may have some more, as the Administrator of Special Education, and she may have some more information. But the information that we have available to us currently at the Department of Education relative to the cost of these pupils is specifically for the residential placement kids, because that's the information we receive right now under the state special education aid program, previously known as catastrophic aid. And otherwise, we do not receive individual expenditure information relative to special education kids.
Follow up.
So,
Do you not receive individual numbers of students?
We do have numbers.
Maybe I can wait until she comes, Mr. Chair.
okay. Did you want to get an answer to that before we voted on this?
Yeah, I just want to understand what, as a finance committee, what is it that that the state is picking up the cost for this inclusion number? Because it says indeterminable, but I think we could have at least a floor estimate and hopefully a ceiling estimate of what this cost will be.
Okay, so you would prefer to wait to vote on this until you,
Yes,
Okay.
if that would be okay.
Question on that.
Senator Gaida?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed on the amended 425 fiscal note that it says through its October 2020 child count, October 1, 2020 child. Can we get any more recent data than that, perhaps? I don't know if it's available.
I'll confer with Becky when she gets here.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Okay. So we'll set this one aside right now and come back to that when we have someone from Department of Ed that we can answer questions. Let's go on to House Bill 1526.
Move up to pass as amended.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass. Is there a second? Second by Senator Rosenwald. It's open for amendment. Senator Rosenwald, you're recognized.
Thank you. My amendment is so technical in nature. It just adds one sentence, starting on line 6. The department may accept and expand. Oh, it's want to spell expend correctly. May accept and expend matching federal funds for this purpose without prior approval of the fiscal committee. This is just boilerplate language, but we would want to get a committee amendment to change expand to expend.
I think we can do that.
We certainly don't want to expand. And that, prevents the department from having to take time at fiscal just to accept the matching federal funds for Medicaid.
So the Senator Rosenwald is moving Amendment 1741S. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Reagan. Any further discussion beyond making sure we have expend instead of expand? Senator Guida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, I believe that this amendment reduces significantly the previous expenditure that was forecast in the original bill. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, so you're voting on Amendment 1741S as amended. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Now we're on to ought to pass as amended. But moved by Senator Guida,
Second.
seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. And Senator Rosenwald?
Sure.
Who is taking out 1513?
Well, we haven't voted on it yet.
Oh,
It's
that's
not
right,
the
we
one
set that
we
aside.
set aside.
Okay, got it. Okay, going to 1584.
Move ITL.
Senator Reagan moves inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1584. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Senator Guida. Discussion. Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be voting against the ITL motion. I think a lot of our fairs suffered from the effects of the pandemic and having to be closed for a year and maybe concessions made for a following year. And we're not eligible for relief funds, or if they were, the volunteers for the organizations that run them didn't realize they were. So I'll be supporting this legislation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion. Senator Guida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a difficult call for me to vote ITL. However, COVID is over and the effects of COVID on the fairs is passed. Were this a one-time appropriation to deal with that, I could support it, but this is in perpetuity. And I note that most of the resources, the significant resources of these fairs lie fallow and unused for the vast majority of the year. And so rather than establish a program that supports this, I could potentially support it if there was some kind of a plan by these fair groups to better utilize the resources and assets at their disposal that lie fallow for the most of the rest of the year. And for that reason, although I support the fairs, I have one in my district, so that's what makes this difficult. But again, to establish a perpetual payout when the facilities are not using the assets and resources at their disposal, to me, is not good public policy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I don't have a fair in my district at all. And I'm sympathetic to their needs, but I have to agree with Senator Gaida to appropriate this every year, but then say, well, if there's $1 million in the fund, we're not going to give out any grants. I'd rather fund it once and see how it does. And then if we see that it's helpful and gets used and the fairs do well, I'd consider funding it again. But this, the ongoing appropriation, I don't think I can bring myself to.
Thank you. Further discussion? I'll say that the fairs may have been something that were affected by COVID shutdown, but I would believe that they would have also been eligible for CARES Act money because of the loss. The other thing is in the fiscal note, it notes that there are currently 13 members of the New Hampshire Fairs Association. So it's unclear that this money is just for the Fairs Association members, or are there fairs that are not part of the association? But then it also goes on and talks about, you know, if it were distributed evenly, there's an amount that it would get. However, it is likely that the funding will be conducted on a competitive basis. And I'm not sure if that means that something like Deerfield Fair would get, which is the largest and oldest one in the state, would get huge sums of money, where Hillsborough Fair, which is very small, would not. So I will be voting against this as well, and supporting the inexpedient to legislate. Any further discussion? There being none, the motion before us is inexpedient to legislate. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries 4-2. Senator Reagan, you want to take that one out? No. Want me to?
Take it.
I'll take that one out. 4-2, inexpedient to legislate, correct. I'm going to take it out. Going on to House Bill 1597, permitting arraignments for felonies and preliminary examinations to be heard in circuit court. Senator Rosenwald moves ought to pass on House Bill 1597. Is there a second? Hearing no second, do we have an alternate motion?
I'll move ITL.
Senator Reagan moves inexpedient to legislate. Is it seconded by Senator Gaida? Discussion.
There's just no supporting numbers about anything about this.
Yeah, it does seem to indicate that there are a number of felonies filed, although they're using the 2019 numbers. I don't know what has taken place since then. But we did question, because they were asking for 4 new positions, and why the money and those positions couldn't be moved to the circuit court if that was where the caseloads were going. Further discussion. Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this bill would be better served in the budget process, since you're essentially establishing permanent positions. And rather than do that for the long term, in a season of legislative specials, I think this is much better debated and discussed by the legislature when it presents the next budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I think felonies first was a good idea, but it didn't work. So that's why I won't be voting for the ITL.
Okay. Any further discussion? There being none, the motion before us is inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1597. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And it is 5-1. And I'll take that one out as well, Deb. Okay, going on to House Bill 1604, including state medical facilities and the statutes providing medical freedom and immunizations.
Move on to pass.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Senator Gaida. And I think we had a LBA question regarding the FN.
Thank you for the record, Chris Shea from the LBA.
So I think we're looking to see if there was an updated FN on this. I mean, this one goes back to 311.
Right, there's not an updated FN,
There's
otherwise we
not
would have
an
gotten it
updated.
to you today. I don't know if somebody from the department might be able to address any questions that you might have about the amended versions of the bill.
Are there specific questions? Yes. So, for the department? Okay, thank you. Senator Hennessy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you, oh, you can introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Joe Christie, Chief Financial Officer for New Hampshire Hospital.
Okay. And maybe this would be to Mr. Williams as well, since it's not just, the way the Senate Policy Committee updated the bill, is there a fiscal impact to this now?
No. I would say the primary change between when this fiscal note was completed, that's currently in the bill, and the amendment that has been made is the conscientious exemption has been removed, and the religious exemption requirements were detailed out a bit more. So I think that this bill is it does not put the CMS funding at risk to the degree that previous versions did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, motion before us is ought to pass on 1604. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries.
I'll take it.
Senator Hennessy. Going to House Bill 1624.
Move on to pass.
Second.
This is relative to students with disabilities participating in co-curricular activities and making an appropriation. Moved by Senator Reagan, seconded by Senator Hennessy. Discussion. This just appropriates $50,000 to establish unified co-curricular activities in accordance with RSA 21N 411. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries.
I'll take it out.
Thank you, Senator Hennessy. House Bill 1627.
Move on to pass.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass on 1627. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Gaida. Chair recognizes Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have what would be a committee amendment. The amendment I initially drafted was for a different bill, and I have not received the updated version back from OLS yet. Can I pass that out?
Sure.
Thanks, sir.
Senator Hennessy, you are recognized to
Thank you.
explain your amendment.
So what this does is, and I think the numbers may be off with how we amended it on the floor this last session, but what it does is the position that we funded, that we approved in session last week, it takes that position and ultimately 100% of that position will be funded through the 10% EFA administration costs. And so for the years 25 and 26, 50% of that position will be paid for through that 10%. And then by the fiscal year 27, 100% of that position will be paid for through EFA administration costs.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator Hennessy is moving this as a committee amendment.
Yes.
And that's seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Move on to pass the amendment.
Senator Gaida moves ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1627, seconded by Senator Reagan. Discussion. There being none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, motion carries. And Senator Hennessy?
Sure.
And finally, House Bill 1662. Senator Rosenwald moves ought to pass on House Bill 1662. That's seconded by Senator Gaida. Discussion. I guess I'm sorry,
I'll speak.
Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill was the result of a lot of study by both the Health and Human Services Oversight Committee and a number of other committees that were looking at privacy issues within the department. Because of the great variance in nature of programs, the great number of programs and divisions and bureaus, et cetera, our consensus was to establish an overarching governance body to direct the privacy issues that are very important to our citizens, as demonstrated in the constitutional amendment that was passed several years ago. For that reason, we put as the chair of this, the head of the HHS department, thereby setting responsibility for the privacy in that executive position and populating this group, this governance group, with others whose positions are directly relevant to the protection of information and to also the sharing of information and its necessity with various federal or other agencies. So for that reason, I speak in support of the ought to pass.
Thank you, Senator Gaida. Further discussion?
Thank you. I know we're often reluctant to establish new positions that aren't temporary. But I agree with Senator Gaida that this is really a critically important area of focus. The information about the 1.3 3.5 million people in New Hampshire that the department has access to is often very sensitive and private, and once it gets out, it's hard to reel it back in. So I think we should make an exception in this instance, because I think this is really an important initiative.
Thank you. Further discussion? I will be voting against this. I mean, I certainly understand the importance of privacy and information, and I mean, it's something we have long talked about in this legislature, but I would expect that the confidentiality and all the things that go along with the privacy should already be ingrained in the job description of those who are our employees. What I see here as I read the fiscal note is that we're establishing a data privacy and information technology governance board. I mean, that tells me it's basically like another management position, 2 people that are going to manage the managers. And I don't really see that it's really doing anything other than spending about $140,000 per year out of our general funds, in addition to $91,000 a year in federal funds in order to get this done. Had I seen where we would be somehow moving forward or doing something different with the privacy other than what we should already be doing, I probably would support it. But in this case, I cannot. Senator Guida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This body will oversee much more than just employees within. As the committee, I'm sure, is aware, we're going through some significant legislative efforts with respect to closed-loop referral, which would bring other agencies not as employees or state employers into the realm of data sharing and so forth. And while we're working very hard on that, that's one separate initiative. I'm sure that in the future, as technologies change and as the ability to access and hack technologies change, that this body, this governance body, would be very, very well served, and our state's well served by it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before us is ought to pass on House Bill 1662. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Nay. And Senator Morse, you were? Aye. Aye, okay. The vote is 5-1. The motion passes. And Senator Guida? And so let's go back. Do we have someone here from the Department of Education that could answer a question? Thank you. On House Bill 1513. Senator Hennessy?
Thank you.
Well, we'll let go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Fredette. I'm the State Director of Special Education.
Senator Hennessy, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Director. Can you please walk us through what, my understanding is that the House Finance Committee approved an amendment similar or exactly to what Senator Rosenwald's amendment number 1802S is. And I'm wondering, when the Finance Committee approved that, what did they approve financially? What was the number that they were told?
Can you turn your mic on, please? That's okay. There you go.
I have not seen the amendment. I apologize. I was in the House yesterday when they talked about the bill. And thank you very much. Are you speaking to the number of students, or?
I'm speaking to the financial cost to the state if we pass this bill as the proposed amendment.
Right. So we were not able to give them a number of what it would cost for the students. I was able to give them updated numbers since the last fiscal note that we submitted at the beginning of the legislative session. Currently, we have 4 students who are age 21, and we have 186 students who are age 20. So those are updated because we've had students graduate or be exited from the system. Those are the updated numbers for students the fiscal note had referred to just students who were in separate schools or in residential placements. These numbers are all students in the schools ages 21 and 20.
Follow up.
Follow up.
So there's 186 students that this bill would potentially impact?
It would definitely impact the 4 that are 21 because they could potentially stay now until they are 22. It could impact some of the students who are in that 186 if they are to turn 21 during the next school year, which most of them will, because then they will be able to remain in the schools they are in up until their 22nd birthday.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
ask a few follow-up questions. So what is looking at the fiscal note, it says the range of cost is between $22K and $140K. Is that, but it says for private providers, is that residential treatment, placement, and, not treatment, excuse me, residential placement and separate school, or is that just separate school?
Both residential and separate school. I did give them updated numbers if we were to look at just the cost per pupil, which is what we provide for students through special education aid.
And what is that cost?
So that cost is $17,985, so just under $18,000. So we had said that the potential cost for those 4 students and some of the 186 could be what we call cap for special education aid, which is 3 times the cost per pupil, and that is $62,949. So for each of those students, it could be up to that amount for the cap for extraordinary cost.
So my follow-up to this, maybe Senator Rosenwald, your amendment doesn't have a cap, does it? It says all cost?
So if I may, the House did not put a cap on the amount. They had said that it would cover any costs that were not covered by other funding.
So what is
So
the
if it-
ceiling then?
It would be for that cap, which is the 62,000, and then once we reach cap, districts have to pay for 20% up to the 10 times. So it would be that 62,000 plus that 20% up to the 10 times the cap. I know it's a formula that's in.
But we don't have any idea what that might be.
We don't, because each individual IEP team makes that determination about how long a student is going to stay. So, for example, those 4 students that are there, they are 21, but their districts have chosen to keep them until the end of the school year because that's what their IEP determined. But we did have students who, as soon as they turned 21, they were exited from the system. All of those decisions are based individually at each IEP meeting. So I wouldn't be able to determine which kids are going to stay, which kids aren't, because each IEP team meeting makes that individual decision.
Could we potentially have students that come back into our school districts because they're now eligible for
There is
longer
that
period
potential.
of time?
If they were exited just because they turned 21, yes, there is that potential that they could come back.
Thank you.
Senator Gaida?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is it 182 that are 20-year-olds?
186.
186. So of those, were they to opt to stay, would that be worth $17,000 apiece beyond what we had planned to spend for those kids to complete their IEPs?
So it would be beyond what districts had planned for because they've already budgeted for next school year. So they may have budgeted for a student up until their birthday in March, but they didn't budget for March to June. So there would be some costs incurred by the district that they did not plan on. And that's what I think the intent of the House bill or the House Finance Committee was, to cover those expenses they did not budget for.
Thank you very much.
Which, Senator Rosenwald, is the intent of your?
Sorry, we're telling the districts they have to cover these students until they turn 22. But the underlying bill doesn't help the districts cover the cost of that extra schooling. And so this amendment attempts to do that.
Further questions? Senator Gaida?
Thank you. So the worst possible case financially is 186 students at $17,000 apiece. That would be the worst-case possible scenario.
No, that's the best case.
That's the best case.
Yes. That they would stay and they would be in a regular school. They would not need to go outside of their school. They would not need services. They would not need a paraprofessional. So worst case could be up to that 10 times the cap per student if they are in a residential placement, if they have higher needs while they're in the district. So the best case is that they would just be at that cost per pupil. The worst case would be that they go up to that 10 times the cap per student.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none. Thank you very much. We are on Amendment 1802S, and I believe that we have had a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries. Senator Reagan moves ought to pass as amended. That's seconded by Senator Gaida. Discussion. There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. And Senator Rose, is that?
Is anybody going to be able to explain this? I'm happy to take it out, but
I'll help you.
thank you.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes, I'm happy to.
Okay. If you get stuck,
Deb will write her usual
if you-
Pulitzer Prize-winning blurb.
I was gonna say, if you get stuck, come and see us. Motion by Senator Gaida to come out of executive session. Is there a second by Senator Hennessy? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. There being no business, more business for today, we are adjourned. Thank you.